What was the point of Dragonflight? I mean, to many people it felt like a bit of a side adventure, but actually, it sets up the war within. It's a strange expansion though. Its plot was oddly paced, it was pretty messy, and generally, it just wasn't that gripping. So, if you've missed the details, this video is for you. If you feel out of the loop, you're interested in War Within, but you just feel like you don't know enough to actually understand what it is, well, don't worry, today's video will get you up to speed. This is all of the essential lore you need to know, made possible by today's sponsor. You're Squarespace. They're the online site builder with killer templates, tools, and features to get your web presence started right. And at squarespace.com/BellularGaming, or just clicking that handy link down below this video, you can get a free trial and use code BellularGaming for 10% off your first purchase of a site or domain. Now, since I started with them making our job site, they have released so many features. My favorite for getting started is Blueprint. With Blueprint, you choose from professionally curated layouts and styling options, and you build up essentially your own Squarespace template from the ground up. It's tailored to you, working across every device. And Blueprint helps you do things like use cohesive fonts and a good color palette. That's how your site looks good by default, but of course you can do all of those further tweaks. They have got dozens of modern and intuitive options to display your content, and they can even automatically bring stuff in from your own social media accounts. That's just one thing. They're always building more features like bio sites. You can get a site in bio to complement your full site, and recently they've launched a whole new template that is aimed at designers, and they've also launched proposal documents to help you land gigs. They're really slick. That's just a taste, of course, of what Squarespace do. So if you go to squarespace.com/BellularGaming or just click that link down below, you'll be able to start your free trial. You can actually try all their tools and build a website with the trial, and then when you're ready to send it live, 10% off your first purchase of a site or domain with code BellularGaming. One of the biggest things Dragonflight did was to flesh out a whole era of Warcraft history. Over 20,000 years ago, Azeroth bore witness to the titanic ascension of the dragon aspects, but it was not a time of universal harmony. Many proto-drakes disagreed with the Titans' ideology. The aspects, in contrast, acted as obedient servants. They even forcibly altered proto-drake eggs, placing in the waters from Tyrhold. Now, these waters, infused with arcane magic from the halls of infusion, are why our dragons appear smooth, while the other dragons, that we might call proto-dragons, why they appear primal. Now, 4 of those drakes who opposed the whole thing took a drastic step. They embraced elemental powers and they transformed themselves into these, the primal incarnates. Their leader, Iridikron, harbored a deep hatred for the Titans. His goal was not just to bring down the aspects, but it was to set a trap to kill the gods themselves. This mammoth task to somehow force Aman'Thul, leader of the Titans, home, would require putting Azeroth in grave danger. Conveniently, this aligned with the Void's objectives, leading to an alliance of sorts. However, this coalition faced defeat in the War of the Scaleborn. The Incarnates were actually locked away in titanic prisons. They were stuck in there in stasis for 20,000 years. Yet for the Void, this outcome was part of a larger plan. First, Neltharion secured the Incarnates' defeat by reaching for the Void in desperation, and that set into motion everything that led him to becoming Deathwing, and that of course led to the fall of Deathwing and the eventual attempt to bring in the Hour of Twilight. That plan of course failed. We were victorious in the Cataclysm expansion, but the Incarnates were due to return at a more opportune moment, and so they did, this time backed by the Primalists, who effectively were eco-terrorists. They were made up of the many sort of more nature-inclined among Azeroth. Their ranks were quite made up of like druids, shamans, lots of elves, lots of Tauren. They essentially believed that the Titans' ordering of Azeroth was an unnatural thing that should be reversed. And that's pretty much a theme that is carried straight into War Within, though not with the Primalists, because as one of the baddies in Dragonflight, they very much got defeated. Okay, so now you understand a bunch of background stuff. Let's actually get to the meat of the expansion, starting with the pre-patch. Dragonflight's pre-patch revisited Uldaman, and it set 2 key stories in motion. First up, a disc containing the Titan Keeper Tyr's personality was found. Placing that in a Keeper shell would somewhat bring Tyr back. But the Infinite Dragons intervened, they stole the disc, and they threatened to break the timeline and bring about Morozond. The second, and far more important for the start of the expansion thing, was the Aspects discovered they could restore their Oath Stones in the Dragon Isles, and they thought that doing so would allow them to get back the power that they had sacrificed to defeat Deathwing in the Cataclysm expansion. Rathian claimed the Black Dragonflight's Oathstone with help from Sibelian and his Outland Black Dragons. Now, they brought their eggs to the Ruby Life Pools. That activated the Red Oathstone because basically eggs from all 5 flights had been returned. The Green Dragonflight then restored their Oathstone by renewing an ancient alliance with the Onaran Plains Centaur. Kelagos then, after essentially disbanding the Blue Flight, activated his flight's Oathstone by reuniting with his Blue Dragonflight family. Nosdormu and Chromie then battled the Infinite Dragon Eternus to stabilize the timeways around their Oathstone. This was all success, but despite the individual stones coming online, the Mother Oathstone remained dormant. Now, this was the Oathstone that essentially symbolizes their bond with the Titans, and it helps to infuse the dragons with more Order magic. And if you're thinking this is a bit of a strange MacGuffin thing, it totally is that. The Mother Oathstone wouldn't turn on, and the literal nuts and bolts reason is actually still unclear. However, the symbolism is completely obvious, though it's not actually followed up for a few more patches, and that means that before we deal with the Oathstone thing, we've got to talk about Sarkareth, the Drakthir, and the Void. The Drakthir, who were the new race added in this expansion, were Neltharion's experimental army. They were kept in stasis for over 20,000 years using Malagos's help. What happened to kick off this expansion, though, was that Kurog Grimtotem and the Primalists awakened them alongside Razageth. Their plan was to awaken Razageth, who was one of the Primal Incarnates, and then she would be able to break her mates out of jail. In doing so, they woke up the Drakthir. Now, Neltharion had divided his army into 5 combat units called Wyrns. The Primalists decimated the Argent Vigil Wyrn. In fact, far more than decimate. Only one of them was left alive, and she is called Emberthal. The other worms did fare better in the attack, but some were still left pretty decimated. Still, though, for the first time, the Drakthir were out in the world, actually having choices to make. One of them, Viridia, disbanded her healing wings. Senderthresh and the Dark Talons decided to join the Horde, while Azurathel and the Obsidian Warders joined the Alliance. Emberthal, though, didn't have a Wyrn, and that meant that she became really the face of their cause. So, by the end of the Drakthir starting zone, they had essentially fragmented off, and Razageth was free. That all led into the core content of the expansion's initial release, and that all culminated essentially with us defeating Razageth, but we defeated her too late. She was able to weaken the defenses around her allies, so the other 3 incarnates basically broke out of jail. We were able to escape, but they essentially remained at large. At this stage, Iridikron was very much their leader. Iridikron had plans that at the time we did not understand. One thing was made very clear in a cinematic, though. He would use Sarkareth. Sarkareth, you see, had heard voices from beneath the Dragon Isles, and in the initial experience of this expansion, we basically found Sarkareth's people just rummaging about the place, trying to find anything Deathwing related. The voices, though, they were deep. He believed that the voices were Neltharion calling them to claim their legacy. Like always, the voices were actually not Sarkareth's friend. And with that, the true antagonist was actually emerging, the Void. Iridikron essentially had been using Sarkareth as a distraction. He was pursuing his own agenda while the other Dragonflights just chased the Sundered Flame down into Zaralek Cavern and eventually into the raid Aberrus. He basically knew that Sarkareth's mission was totally doomed from the start. Neltharion's legacy was below, but it was just a legacy of torment and deception. In Aberrus, Sarkareth found a Faceless One masquerading as his father, and he fell to corruption in the Inner Sanctum, which, by the way, was this rather beautiful room that set up this design language, this blue-black cosmic void, not to be confused with the sort of fleshy purple tentacle void magic that was associated with old gods. No, with this, it was a bit more deep and dark, a bit more spooky, a bit more unknown, basically a new threat that was advancing on Azeroth. Okay, Iridikron and the Incarnates swept through the Dragon Isles like a force of nature. Farak was sent down into the Zaralek Cavern to claim the power of Shadowflame, and then he turned his attention to claiming the New World Tree and Mirdrasil. But at this time, we did not know what Iridikron's real plan was. Not even the other incarnates did. While we were distracted with Sarkareth, the Infinites sprung their time trap on the Bronzeflight. Iridikron's true objective was the essence of Galakrond. That essence, void-like in appearance, caused Galakrond, way back in the day, to endlessly hunger. He ate everything he could, including his own kin, to basically become gigantic in size and power. So Iridikron had traveled back in time to just after Tyr and the still Proto-Drake aspects had defeated him in order to extract the essence fresh. So that we didn't interfere, he and the Infinites gave us a dilemma. We could create two different timelines. In one path, we stop Iridikron, but Nosdormu is forcibly turned into Morizond, his more evil, world-ending counterpart. In the other, we save Nosdormu, but Iridikron gets to slip away with his prize. We of course end up choosing to save Nosdormu and to defeat the Infinite Dragons. That allows Iridikron to escape through a void portal, a portal that had a very familiar silhouette, Xal'atath. I've got a whole video going deep into her story, so you can check that out for the full deets, but the quick version is, she's a mysterious void being and our primary antagonist for the War Within. But before that, Iridikron revealed his plan that he wants to force the Titans back home to defend the planet. He wants to force them to do that so that he can kill them, to put an end to them, because for him, this is all about vengeance, it is all about the fight. Just earlier, we had found a set of Naga writings detailing the Harbinger and the prophecy that she would fulfill before Queen Ashara returns. Now, the Harbinger was quickly worked out to be Xal'atath, and the prophecy goes like this: to corrupt a primal power, which we think is Iridikron, to reclaim a hunger lost to the ages, which is obviously the one from Galakrond, and then to reclaim a dark heart left empty. That dark heart, by the way, is the amulet that we see Iridikron and now Xal'atath with, and basically it seems to have been a prototype for the Dragon Soul made by an Eltharion way back in the day. With that then, the time story ended with some of the Infinites being led by Eternus, who of course we dealt with at the very start of the expansion, essentially defecting from the Infinites and deciding to enter into a loose alliance with the Bronze Dragonflight. They basically had a shift in perspective. Then, of course, we took a big shift over to handle the current big threat, which was the completely unhinged Farak. Early in Dragonflight, we planted a seed, right? Now this seed is the Tear of Elune from the story of Shadowlands, one that was nourished by the souls of the Night Elves who died when Sylvanas burned Teldrassil. That seed was planted in the Emerald Dream for safekeeping, getting ready to bloom into a new world tree. Farak, of course, then took it upon himself to assault the Emerald Dream and the tree within. Farak's goal was to claim the tree's power for himself and to basically torch the entire world with Shadow Flame. With the help of Virinoth, the icy primal incarnate who actually defected over to our side because she essentially realized that Farak was so completely unhinged that she was now the baddie, so she moves over to us. And so with her and a bunch of other characters, we defeat Farak and we defend the tree. The fresh world tree then responds in kind by granting the aspects their powers back. Yes, we're finally at the bit of the video where I talk about the Mother Oathstone again. Basically, the Oathstones were never really mentioned. They didn't work, our characters never really interrogated why, but in the process of actually defending the world itself, through the tree, granted the dragons powers back, pretty much equal to what they had before. And that of course renders the Mother Oathstone completely unnecessary because their power now comes from Azeroth herself. That is the massively symbolic part of this plot for the future of the game. And in writings found within the dream, we uncovered some further lost history. The moon goddess Elune actually conspired with the Titan Aenar to plant a world tree close to Azeroth's heart during the Titan Ordering. However, the Allfather Amenthul did not trust nature to have such a hold on Azeroth, so he tore the tree out, leaving just the roots. That bit was by accident, though. Those roots we, of course, will encounter in the War Within. We now move to Tyr. The earlier story about Tyr's rebirth came to a head after we defended Emirdrassil. Earlier we had uncovered his laboratory and it was full of experiments on proto-drakes, attempts to infuse them with different kinds of magic and that sort of stuff. We also recovered a tool that allowed us to rebuild Tyr's body. All that was missing was, of course, the memory disk that was stolen by the Infinites. So, Tyr's Guard, an order of paladins, is formed to find that disk. that adventure takes them and us to an alternate timeline where we face off against Elisande in the Nighthold. And after some failed attempts to defeat her, she actually lends us the disc, saying that she's got everything from it that she needs. So, with that, we're able to get Tyr back online at some point in the future. He's going to awaken, and he's going to find an entirely different world, one that is in danger. And this is something setting up a whole other set of Titan and time-related mysteries for us to sink our teeth into. But for now, our focus is on the final patch, and is on Darkheart. In our final patch before the War Within, Xal'atath properly reveals herself. People from across Azeroth begin to experience the Radiant Song, these strange dreams, these strange voices. Meanwhile, Void Elves in Tel'Okr's Rift start to detect void activity planet-wide, so we join Illyria, tracking those disturbances to Ulduar, and when there, we find Shadowguard Ethereals attacking. Now, the Shadowguard are void-corrupted beings from the Legion expansion. We actually ran into them when we went to Argus. Now, they're here and they're working for Xal'atath. Ulduar's defenses hold, and we end up driving those attackers away. But it turns out the entire scenario is just Xal'atath's ploy to unsettle Illyria. Illyria's mentor, the Void Ethereal Locust Walker, recognizes Xal'atath. He shares a crucial piece of information with us as well, that his homeworld, Koresh, heard something similar to the Radiant Song just before the Void Lord Dimensius arrived to consume his home's world soul. And so Dragonflight, while having plenty of its own narratives, serves as the prologue to the World Soul saga. It exists to challenge our perception of the Titan's influence on Azeroth, to essentially extrapolate things that us loreheads had been thinking about for a long time. The dragons are now not really tied to the Titans, they are tied to Azeroth herself. That maybe will be relevant later when the Titans return in the third expansion of the World Soul saga. We've also set up Tyr's return as a Titan Keeper. That will be pretty major because it seems he had quite a few clashes of opinion with Odin, a character introduced in Legion. This expansion also reveals Xal'atath's plan, and it establishes Iridikron as the saga-spinning antagonist. That's actually the point. There's a cinematic near the end of this expansion, but before Darkheart, where Iridikron basically goes to do a final message to Verinoth. He basically says, okay, well, you're not going to see me for a long time. And that is, of course, because he is waiting until the Titans decide they have to return to Azeroth. That's when he's going to spring his trap on them. Above all, though, what it does is it positions the Void as our primary threat. Not the old gods, as we faced previously, but something altogether more powerful, more unknown, and more from the cosmos. Following that, we'll of course grapple with the Titan's legacy, all while guiding Azeroth's world soul towards a safe awakening. This is all stuff that will be continued in the War Within. So now, between Iridikron as our primary antagonist, what's actually happened to the Dragonflights throughout the Dragonflight expansion, and the core little lore details that you actually need to have in your head to understand this story, well, by the end of this video, that should all be in your head. But that is not all I've got. Be sure to subscribe because we are doing a full deep dive into Illyria, basically her history from the very beginning to now. And if you would like that, but for Xal'atath, the primary antagonist of the War Within, good news, you can check out this video next.